Welcome to Leadership Conversations, where we talk with today's real-world leaders. My name is Marnie Fletcher and I'm the founder of Build, Grow, Leverage. And today we're here with Craig Ralston, Group Executive of Service Excellence at Me. How are you today, Craig?
Good, thanks Marnie, how are you?
Very good.
Good.
Craig, the topic of today is heart-centred leadership.
Yeah.
And at Build, Grow, Leverage, we really promote the sense of authenticity around leadership and really being the best version of yourself in order to be and help your people be the best that they can be.
Yeah.
And we grow up, you've been through the corporate world and ASIC's top 200 companies,
Yep.
where we grow up with the notions of traditional management, which aren't always connected with the heart, but it's around making decisions with the head.
Yep.
And so I'm interested to start off in that zone and your definition of heart-centred leadership.
Yeah, thanks Marnie. You talked about authenticity before. That's probably the biggest attribute or the biggest thing that sits behind heart-centred leadership for me is the notion of being very authentic. A sense of mindfulness of both the people that you're leading or working with, what's important to them, how that connects into organisational or corporate goals. And then humanism is probably the other part that we're all coming from the same place in terms of as people. We're all going to have the same usually emotional needs and you can't really, if you lose sight of that, you're probably going to miss a bit as a leader. So for me, it's probably trying to just simplistically look at it from being very, very authentic and also just seeing the value of humanity and humanism in people that you lead and work with.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
And so despite those traditional notions of management that we do grow up with in the corporate environment, who have you seen who's been great, in leading with the heart despite that environment around them?
It's really interesting because I don't necessarily think back to there are some great role models for me who I feel probably represent good heart-centred leadership. And so I've got a colleague at Me, Angela Middleton, who I think is very, very authentic. And you can see that genuineness that sits behind Angie's style as a leader. And so I think she would be a great role model. And then there's others who I haven't worked so closely with, but another example would be John Nesbitt, who's a new director at our organisation. He's an ex-CEO and CFO of a major bank, one of the regional banks. And just the first interactions and the first 6 months of interacting with John, what really struck me was just how authentic and how real the interactions were. Yeah. And so I probably see that as a really good early sign of someone who is a very heart-centred leader. Yeah. If I think bigger and I think of people in and around the world that I've either been inspired by or I reflect on, someone who is really difficult to know what sits behind the cover but who I would talk about is Barack Obama. He's somebody who had an immense head-based or corporate-based agenda through politics, but what just genuinely seemed to come out was the true north of the individual and just a person they were real. He was always very real when he engaged and when he presented and talked. So, and I think you can kind of see through that with people, even if they're in a position of office or in a very corporate role. Yeah. You get it. You can kind of, you can call it if you see it in someone. So he's another person I kind of call
definitely.
it.
And I think too with Obama too, when you see that authenticity, it's when you can have that real impact as well, because people believe in you and your message. Yeah,
and you want to engage, you want to connect, you want to hear more, and usually that's a pretty good thing in terms of what's the dividend of leadership. It's trying to get people to work together to do something or get a good outcome. And so it really sticks. Yeah,
cool. And so I'm here with you today, Craig, because I think you epitomise heart-centred leadership and are such a great role model. If you were to articulate what makes you different as a leader, what would that be?
Look, it's probably the sense of equality of all coming from, I suppose, a common place as people. And that's probably something I think a lot about. It probably I feel that it would maybe make me a little bit more empathetic as a leader. But also just being really honest around a sense of vulnerability and openness with people that I lead and work with. And almost to a fault at times. That's something that it can then create some demons around how do you kind of lead through change, or how do you lead through challenge, and how do you deal with those moments. But probably the thing that I take some confidence from is I've had good feedback. People feel that is something that they value in me as a leader, and so that's probably the one thing, is just authenticity and trying to keep it real.
Yeah, great. And I know when we've been in meetings together ourselves, one thing I really admire about you is you always go back to that point, what's the right thing to do? Yeah. And that certainly strikes home for me. And
the flip side then is if that's something that you kind of strongly feel, or the way you operate, if then there's a difficult decision to be made or that there's different perspectives, still having the preparedness to to go there and make the tough call or make the decisive call if it needs to be made. You know, that's the bit that then you've still got to be able to do.
Yeah, definitely. And so what do you see as some of the biggest mistakes or myths about leadership?
Look, probably in myths in leadership, it's interesting. I don't know whether it's a myth, but it's something that a lot of people I've either coached or worked with or literally just interacted with. The myth of, or the perception of what leadership is, or why you would become a leader, or why you would follow a path that takes you into leadership. For a lot of people, it feels like it's a very ordained or one-dimensional path, and then you get this conflict that rises up when people are suddenly in a leadership role, but they haven't thought deeply through it. One of the myths, I think, is absolutely, or the mistake is not being authentic or not being vulnerable, or just not being prepared enough to kind of be really, really open with people, because it just creates, people can usually see through it, and it creates conflict and it creates a bit of dysfunction as well. So that's probably the mistake is, you know, like letting ego get in the way or not letting your honest self come through. Yeah,
great. Yeah. And waste of time. What would you say is one of the biggest wastes of time that we engage in as leaders?
So look, my personal confession would be time management is always something that I grapple with. I always feel that the thing that I can sometimes trip up on is having a sense of wanting to please or wanting to achieve and setting the wrong expectations or the wrong goals. And that creates some waste. But time wasting for me is the notion of CC lists. And maybe meetings without really clear objectives as well. They're two things that just, you know, you can just see it, how it plays out. People are then questioning, don't I need to read that email, or why am I in this meeting? Yeah, they're killers.
Yeah, awesome. And I know that you're very well read and enjoy a good book or two. Is there any book or resource you would recommend to the audience around leadership that's had an impact for you? Yeah,
like, so I've probably... I've got a whole bunch of early readings. I did a lot of stuff around emotional intelligence. That was really that was something that it was a helpful, informative leadership years for me. And so Goleman is an absolute big one for me. More recently, though, I've probably steered more towards modern articles and modern references. So McKinsey Insights, like I really, really love looking at McKinsey. Harvard Business Review and Harvard Business School publications are things that, if you can pick in on topic, and again, emotional intelligence, mindful leadership, they're really big things for me. But the other resource I probably think, or I use a lot, is I've got a coach. So I work with a leadership coach, and that is much more organic. It's usually going to be a topic or a conversation or a challenge that might fall into an article or a conversation that gives you something. So it's not a resource in the orthodox sense, but it's hugely valuable to me.
Yeah, terrific. Is there anything in particular you're working on at the moment for yourself?
Yeah, I am. The notion of just perhaps being a little bit more ruthless or relentless, and ruthless sounds really quite confronting, but it's more if there's a true north, or if there's something that absolutely becomes the biggest thing that you can influence or help affect a good outcome, being able to stay really, really true to that, and particularly if in order to get there, it creates some challenges around how do you keep people engaged and feeling safe. That's the bit that I'm working with my coach on at the moment. So usually it's reflections, conversations, looking at triggers and how was your behaviour, and you know, a lot of kind of sort of playbacks.
Yeah. So yeah, cool. Well, thank you for sharing that.
No worries.
So final question for you, and it's a bit of a hypothetical. So let's say that I am in your team and there's a Leader of the Year award going on here at me, and for you as my leader, there's $1 million on the line. So if I know, a bit of skin in the game. So if I win that award, you actually pocket the $1 million, and you've got 4 weeks to get the best out of me. What does my training and schedule look like?
Wow, that's a tough one. It's probably, if we had 4 weeks, I reckon the first week or a fair bit of it would be planning. So let's assume I don't have the chance to kind of be prepared and get rolling. I would spend a fair bit of that startup looking at what's the goals, what's the objectives, and how would we put together the 4 weeks. What would it look and feel like though? I think it would be enjoyable for you. It would be fun. There would be a sense of lots of conversations, lots of reflections, and lots of perspectives. I don't think it would be something you would be doing alone. So I'm a massive believer in almost co-created outcomes or co-created perspectives. So I think if we tapped into a network of people that were great insights and references and set some environments up where we could pick key topics or key opportunities and break them apart, talk through them, reflect, and then try and put some practices in place. That would probably be what it would feel like. It'd have to have a pretty strong objective though, so that's probably the other thing is maybe through some conversations at the outset, looking at the biggest things that you wanted to leave as an impact or that you were looking to develop, and realistically what do we think we could probably achieve in that 4-week time.
Yeah,
it would be fun.
It would be fun.
Yeah.
And I love that. And I think the thing about the 4 weeks is it really has to intensify what are the key things that are most important. And so from yourself, Craig, what I've heard is the planning, the co-creation is really important, and having really clear objectives.
Absolutely.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you for that.
No worries, mate.
So that brings us to an end. Craig, thank you so much for being with us today.
Pleasure. Thank you.
And so leadership starts with you. That's certainly the premise of heartfelt leadership. Please like and subscribe to the channel, and we wish you all the best in your quest to being the best leader possible.